All right. Good afternoon and good morning to our West Coast listeners. My name is Juan Thomas, Chair of the ABA Civil Rights and Social Justice section, and I'm so honored today to have as our guest on our weekly Chair Chat, Casey Payton, who is the Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Justice Initiative. Casey, welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting me today.
We're so glad to have you. I should also mention that you are an active member of the American Bar Association, specifically the Young Lawyers Division. So we want to thank you for your involvement in that space as well. But you're here today as the Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Justice Initiative. And so could you just kick off by telling us what is the Virgin Islands Justice Initiative? What's your mission and purpose? And what is your work?
Yes, so at the Virgin Islands Justice Initiative, we are a 501c3 legal nonprofit organization located in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We are a team of passionate social justice-oriented attorneys who decided to open our doors last year. And so our mission is to alleviate the burdens of poverty here in the Virgin Islands by focusing on economic justice, restorative justice, and high impact litigation. And you can find us at vijustice.org.
We're going to dig into some of the specific work you're doing. I'm so glad to hear about the work you're doing around economic justice. As you know, that's the theme of the year for our section. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you about the Virgin Islands. Specifically, people know of the islands as a place to vacation and kind of go to relax, but there's so much more there. People live there, people make it their home. Obviously, they have issues that you have raised around economic justice. But could you talk a bit about, beyond St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, what are the other smaller islands and territories that make up the U.S. Virgin Islands?
Yes, so like you said, people usually know us because they come on a cruise ship or maybe, just to visit with family. But those are our main islands here. We have St. John or St. Thomas that I live on. St. John is just a 15-minute ferry away. And then we have St. Croix that is a 15-minute seaplane away from here. And then we have all of these different little islands around us. And so you have Water Island, you have Hassel Island, Buck Island. Some of them are places where you can go and spend a day, snorkeling. Other ones, you're going to take a little, like a boat trip over there or something like that. But it makes this area so unique because unlike other islands you might visit where you look around and you don't see anything, here you really see just these beautiful islands all around. And it's just a way, it's just a really fun time to be able to go and explore every place and snorkel and have fun with your friends and family when they come to visit.
Well, it's definitely a beautiful place to visit. Obviously, living and working there, I'm sure you enjoy so much about the islands. And so do you happen to know the population?
So we just got our census numbers back last year, right? And so the population actually went down just a bit. So it used to be 100,000 people among the main three islands, St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix, and it dropped down to about 80,000 or so. And so in St. Thomas, there's about 35, 40,000 people, and St. Croix is a bigger island. There's a kind of the majority of folks are over there. And then St. John has about 4,000 or 5,000 people living there.
And the native language, is it English or are there other languages spoken?
There's definitely other languages spoken. We had a couple of hurricanes back in 2016, 2017. And I got to work with FEMA a lot. And whenever you're working with, a government agency, they want to know what are the primary languages spoken, because you can get things translated into all the different languages. And so that's what I found out here, because we have a very diverse population, but the ones that qualify for having things translated because you have enough people here are French Creole, which if you're talking to FEMA, they call it Haitian Creole, but there's actually
Yeah.
two different types of Creole. One, it derives from Haiti, and one from Dominica, which they're
Mhm.
slightly different. And then Spanish would be the other language that's spoken here, mostly in St. Croix, but there is also a Spanish speaking population in St. Thomas.
Interesting. Now, we identify the islands as the U.S. Virgin Islands. However, interestingly enough, you can't vote for president of the United States if you are a resident of the island. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is one of the strangest things about living down here. So I'm not originally from the Virgin Islands. I'm from California. I've lived in Washington, D.C. But because I am physically in the Virgin Islands, and this is where I am a resident, I cannot vote for president or, I can't vote for federal office. I can vote for our delegate. But it's just so strange that while I'm here, I can't vote for president. Now, if I was somewhere else, anywhere else, I could be in the States, I could be abroad, I would be able to vote for president. But because I am a resident of the Virgin Islands, I cannot.
So just to clarify that point, if you lived in any country like Germany, Canada, France, and you were asking for an absentee ballot to vote, you could vote in the United States.
That's
right.
Right.
But you can't vote if you are a resident of the Virgin Islands.
That's right. And that's a problem that several of the territories have had. And if you're born in the U.S. Virgin Islands, you are an American citizen. You can move to the States and you can vote once you move to the States. But if you are currently residing in the Virgin Islands, no, you cannot vote for president.
But our sisters and brothers who live in Puerto Rico, they can vote, correct? For U.S. federal office?
Yes. It's just the difference between the way that the government identifies the different territories, whether it's a commonwealth or otherwise. So
this might be an ample time for an ABA resolution. I'm not sure if the ABA has policy on this question.
Absolutely. There is a nonprofit that has been working on this, and they've gone up to the U.S. Supreme Court several different times with different, high impact litigation, right?
Right.
They've gone lots of different angles, and they just keep getting shot down. So there's a small but mighty group trying, but I think there just isn't an awareness that there is that disenfranchisement.
Right. I think you're right. A lot of people probably are not aware of that, particularly when we think about our friends and colleagues who live in Puerto Rico who we know do vote and can vote. We probably assume the fact that there's a delegate in Congress who represents the Virgin Islands, that the citizens of the Virgin Islands can vote. So much needed work to be done there. Let me shift to your work as executive director of the Justice Initiative. You've got an event coming up this weekend called the Sandcastle Festival.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that, and what is the purpose and mission of that festival?
I'm so excited about this. I am going to try not to talk for the whole entire time on this, but I literally just returned from the beach where our professional sand sculptors just arrived.
None of us are jealous about you just coming from the beach, middle of the day in the Virgin Islands.
It's gonna be
no
awesome.
One's jealous. Just want to say that.
So I don't know if you've seen those giant professional sand sculptures. They're like 6 feet tall, and they're really impressive. I grew up going to a festival every year in my hometown in California. And I would go with my family, and it was just such a good time. And so with the Virgin Islands Justice Initiative, we are primarily funded through fundraising because we're not federally funded. We're not an LSC through Legal Services Corporation. And so we get to put on fundraisers. And we decided early on we weren't going to be doing black tie gala fundraisers because it's more fun to do community events. And so our model that we're using is that we put on a fun, free, family-oriented, community event, but then our sponsors are the ones who then pay for our operations. And we do that through these events. And so I was just thinking about that this morning, that it was probably a year ago today. I was sitting on my couch and I was thinking, okay, what spring event should we do? What should we do? And I had a whole list of things. And all of a sudden I was just thinking, let's do a sand sculpture sandcastle festival. That would be awesome. They've never done one here before.
This is the first one you've done?
Yeah, this is the first
Wow.
one. This is our first time doing it. But the model that people use for sandcastle festivals or sand sculpting festivals, it's a fundraiser. And so why not use the beautiful beaches of St. Thomas and let, the community come and participate? And so it's going to be not only just the professionals that are building over the next 2 days to prepare, but it's going to be, we're going to have musical guests. We're going to have vendors, local food. We're going to have a kids zone with face painting and hula hoop contests and potato sack races. And we're going to have other contests for sculpting. So we invited the local artist community to come on down. We have a kids and family contest, and the professionals are going to be showing people how to do it. No experience required. I mean, You can't get much more fun than this in my book.
And the funds that are raised will go to support the work of the initiative. Is that
That's
correct?
right. And so we have a couple different ways that we do it. We have our sponsors, right? So our biggest sponsor is Perfected Claims, and they're bringing these guys down. So we don't really pay for the event expenses out of pocket. They're either donations or in-kind donations or sponsors, and then everything that's above the cost of the event, it goes towards our operations. And we have 2 big events like this a year. This is our spring event. Our fall event is a harvest festival and pumpkin patch at Macon's Bay Beach. So it's a really fun model to use. And the other thing that we have for each of our events is we have a crowdfunding campaign. So if you went on our website, vijustice.org, there's a crowdfunding campaign there that just shows, you support our organization. You also support having this event come back year after year.
And so you hope to do this, make this an annual event. It will always be around in the early summer, June timeframe.
So the Sandcastle Festival is the Saturday after Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
And then our Harvest Festival and Pumpkin Patch is the Saturday after Columbus Day. So it's going to be October 14th this year. So we like to do it after a holiday weekend because then we're not competing with anybody else. And it gives us more time to prepare.
Right. Or you get people to come down there for the entire week, that holiday weekend, and they just stay through the festival.
Yeah, it's working out so far. I mean, our other event brings close to 1,000 people. And so we kind of expect the same for this event. We'll see how it goes.
And so people travel from all across the U.S. territories or across the Caribbean area to these events, or is it more localized?
It's more local. So our target audience is the demographics that we serve for our organization. And so we're very intentional about putting this Sandcastle Festival at Brewers Bay Beach because it's a local beach. We know that we're going to attract folks who are native Virgin Islanders who are in need of our services, as opposed to putting it on a more popular tourist beach. We wouldn't be attracting the folks who need to hear about the work that we do. And so we're really particular about making sure that we do that. However, there's a lot of interest, because, we send out our press releases, we have a lot of momentum. And so people come from all over. And I have a feeling that if we make it bigger next year, more people are going to be coming out for it because it's just really cool to watch this performance art, with these guys who, I mean, they one of them just came from Disney World where he was working on one of their sculptures. But they're world champions. They're Guinness Book of World Record holders. Like they're really good. So everyone wants to come and see their work.
Good. So let's spend some time talking about the specific communities that you serve and the services that you provide. And if you could put that in the context of what are some of the systemic problems that are in the Virgin Islands? You mentioned poverty. Could you speak more to that and how you're trying to combat some of those systemic issues?
Absolutely. Part of the reason that the attorneys for our organization decided to start this organization is because we saw that there were so many gaps in services that really were unfair for Virgin Islanders in the context that we're talking about predominantly Black territory. Okay. And so when we had that kind of frame of mind and we realized that certain services would be available through nonprofit organizations or government agencies in the States, but they're not offered here in the Virgin Islands, we took issue with that because as attorneys, we're trained to be able to help these people. And yet there wasn't any way for people who needed the services to get them for free. And that's what we do. We provide free legal representation. And so one of the things that you'll see, and we tackle it through our restorative justice program, is that in the Virgin Islands, even though there is a law for a second chance, a clean slate expungement, it's not really being used, except for by a handful of attorneys who may charge anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000 to get a misdemeanor expunged from your record. That makes it so it's not accessible to the majority of people who actually need that help. And before I started this organization, I worked for the Public Defender's Office for 2 years, and I worked for Legal Services for 4 years, which receives, federal funding through the Legal Services Corporation. And I realized neither of them were doing expungements, and nobody else was. And so, in order to just help people out, I had to start something new. Right. And so, what you see with that is that, predominantly Black territory, we have a lot of Black and brown people here who absolutely have a right to have their record expunged, but they are going to have that mark on their rap sheet forever if our organization or others like us, I suppose, don't intervene. And so that's something that you see folks who can't get a job, they're considered laborers because they can't, get a job where they're going to be on the books and start paying taxes. They can't, you can't attach any child support. You can't garnish their wages if they're a laborer, if they're under the table. And so just kind of bringing folks back into the community who maybe, made a mistake when they were younger and have been dealing with the consequences of that ever since.
How many lawyers practice in the Virgin Islands? Do you happen to know that?
Oh my goodness. I have access to that information. It's about 350. About 350 lawyers are actively practicing in the Virgin Islands. However, the vast majority of them are working for the government. And so the pool of folks who can do pro bono work, who are, employed by a private practice is actually really small. It's a small pool. I used to run the pro bono program at Legal Services. And so that's how I know that information. But we actually don't have nearly enough lawyers down here. It is a wonderful place to work. If anyone wants to, move down here, have great quality of life and have a good paying job, they're always hiring for lawyers in all of the sectors. It doesn't matter, big firm, small firm, government, nonprofit, always hiring.
And do you have to be a resident of the island to practice there, or can you practice remotely? Can you have a hybrid practice where you practice half the year in, summer in Chicago, but winter in the island?
You don't have to be a resident. We do have a bar membership, so it's a UBE it's a UBE state, I guess you could say, territory
Right.
now.
Right.
That
Right.
switched over just a couple of years ago. And so that's been enticing folks who took the UBE bar exam, and then they can transfer over. But if you're going to be working for the government or for a nonprofit, there's a way to waive in to work for just 2 years and then take the exam. So you can get hired and start working here or work remotely if you're doing it for the government or nonprofit for that short period of time before you need to actually get barred.
Well, that leads me to my next question. How can lawyers generally, and specifically the ABA or our section, support the work of your initiative or the needs of the community, of the people who live and reside in the Virgin Islands?
I think that the ABA Young Lawyers Division has done such a great job of putting the Virgin Islands on the map. Some of my predecessors who were in leadership roles with the ABA Young Lawyers Division really made it so that people were aware of what we did. And having a young lawyer from the Virgin Islands speak on certain panels or being in a leadership position, that way, whenever you go to an ABA conference or, you're a delegate or something like that, that's where you can really talk to the people who can make a difference in the ABA and get some things passed. For our organization, we're just hoping to spread the word and let folks know that, hey, there's a new legal nonprofit in town that has never existed before. Letting people know that if you were in the States, you would have a federally funded legal nonprofit and you would have a non-federally funded legal nonprofit so that all of the gaps can be filled. But this is the first time this has happened in the Virgin Islands. The other legal aid has been here for over 50 years, but there has never been, another group that can help fill some of those gaps.
Well,
and so,
how have you been received?
We've been received so great in the Virgin Islands. I can't say as much about the ABA in general because I had a baby recently. And so I haven't been able to travel as much. My first conference back was the Equal Justice Conference in early May. And so that was the first time that I was able to share the work that we've been doing with the greater, ABA. But here locally in the Virgin Islands, law firms, attorneys, the different companies, corporations, and all the people here. I mean, people just really appreciate that we're putting in this energy to create this organization that is filling gaps.
Well, first, congratulations on the baby.
Thank you.
And I know that is a full-time job on top of running this amazing organization. Tell us how we can contact you. You mentioned your website. Can you give us that information one more time?
Sure. So the Virgin Islands Justice Initiative, our website is vijustice.org. Our phone number is 340-774-6504. And you can always reach us at info@vijustice.org or events@vijustice.org. We're always looking for help.
And those who want to support the Sandcastle Festival this weekend, how do we do that?
You just go to our website, vijustice.org, and you can see at the top, it's going to say, VI Sandcastle Festival, and you'll see our crowdfunding site up there. We appreciate any and all donations so that we can continue to keep this event free for the community and for it to be able to fund our operations as well. We really rely on folks and just their kindness, companies' kindness, individuals who are willing to help fund the work that we do.
Well, Casey, I like to ask my guests as we wrap up a bit about themselves personally. Now, when you're not being a new mom, when you are not working at the initiative, and when you're not on the beach, what do you do for fun?
So I'm a runner. I like to run. The St. Thomas has lots and lots of hills. It's a small island. It's only 13 miles by 4 miles. However, it's straight up and straight down. And so you'll find me most mornings running in my neighborhood.
Wonderful, wonderful. And if you were not a lawyer, tomorrow you woke up and you could be anything else, what would you be and why?
Besides a lady of leisure, if I were to do something.
You
No,
wouldn't
I'm
want to
kidding.
work.
I'm just kidding. No, I feel like I'm really fulfilling my purpose with this job. I feel like I'm doing exactly what I want to do, but I did have a career before law where I worked in politics. I was the district scheduler for Congresswoman Barbara Lee in Oakland, California, and I would love to work for another member of Congress, her or any, I like to be in that space, or to work on a campaign. It's just that energy level and that sense of mission of central, everyone has the same purpose. I love that.
Right.
I love being behind a machine like that.
Well, the ABA, we can't be political here, but from what I've read and heard, she's applying for a new job in California. So there might be an opportunity.
I can't believe she's running for Senate. I'm so proud of her. I have nothing but love in my heart for Congresswoman Barbara Lee. If it wasn't for her, I would not be a lawyer today. I know that for sure. Yep. She encouraged me to go to law school. She encouraged me to go to Howard Law. And now I am where I am because she gave me that opportunity. So I cannot say enough good things about her as a person.
Well, Casey, you are one of the amazing Howard Law grads I've met over the years. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the Howard Law School. You stand in that tradition that Charles Hamilton Houston talked about of being a social engineer. And so I want to thank you for your work, your contribution to our profession, and have a wonderful weekend at the festival. And hopefully people will support that initiative. And thank you for being our guest today on our weekly Chair Chat. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope that we get to speak again soon in this kind of a space.
We will. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening today. And hopefully we'll see you next week